Do you ever find yourself staring at an online store full of thousands of products knowing you need just one, yet feeling paralyzed and exhausted by the options? You click from filter to filter, convinced that the perfect choice is just one more scroll away, and then later you lie awake worrying that you picked wrong. This creeping dissatisfaction, this nagging what if, is not a personal flaw but a feature of modern life. The paradox of choice. In a world where abundance has become the norm, more options promise freedom but deliver anxiety, regret, and a strange sense of emptiness. In this video, we'll explore why your brain rebels against excessive choices by turning freedom into a burden, uncover the psychological experiments that expose how decision overload undermines well-being, and reveal a practical toolkit to reclaim clarity and confidence in your everyday decisions. Along the way, you'll learn simple thought exercises to limit your mental menu, a self-compassion ritual to silence the voice of "I should have chosen better," and a proven method to transform decision goals into action without second-guessing yourself. You'll discover why a handful of thoughtfully curated options can be the key to happiness and how embracing intentional constraints can actually expand your sense of freedom. By the end of this journey, you'll have a clear roadmap for navigating choice in a world of limitless possibilities, so you can finally enjoy the freedom you've always wanted without feeling trapped by it. When you're faced with too many options, your brain's decision-making system shifts into overdrive, and that's where the trouble begins. First, endless choice creates paralysis. Like standing before a 50-flavor gelato counter, you spend so long weighing strawberry against salted caramel that you leave empty-handed or settle for a flavor you don't really love. Second, more options fuel regret. After you finally pick mango, your mind can't help but imagine the bliss you might have felt had you chosen pistachio instead, and you end up disappointed with your perfect choice. Third, each new alternative raises your opportunity cost, the mental price tag of every path not taken, so even a good decision feels costly. Psychologists call this the jam study, where shoppers presented with 24 jam varieties were 10 times less likely to buy than those given only 6. Simply because fewer choices felt easier and more satisfying. Then there's the maximizer trap. If you're wired to seek the absolute best, a vast menu turns every decision into a test you can never fully pass, creating self-blame when reality falls short of your mental ideal. At the same time, your emotional battery is drained. Every choice consumes willpower, leaving you vulnerable to impulsive grabs at the cheapest, most obvious solution later on. Understanding these three hidden costs, paralysis, regret, and opportunity cost, is the first step toward reclaiming your mental energy. Instead of treating choice as a boundless freedom, you can learn to treat it as a resource to manage, pruning your options down to a handful that truly matter and saving your cognitive power for decisions that deserve it most. But why does our mind rebel when faced with options? The answer lies in our cognitive architecture and existential inheritance. Psychologists distinguish between maximizers, who endlessly hunt for the absolute best and often end up dissatisfied, and satisficers, who search until they find an option that meets their criteria and then stop. A mental strategy that conserves energy and preserves contentment. Imagine a painter handed a palette of infinite colors. Overwhelmed, she might freeze, brush hovering in midair rather than choosing one. Philosophers from Sartre to Camus warned that radical freedom can feel like a burden, because with each choice comes responsibility and the fear of regretting a path untaken. Evolutionarily, our ancestors made decisions among a handful of options: which berries to eat, where to camp, so our brains weren't built for today's buffet of thousands. This mismatch overloads working memory, drains willpower, and triggers hedonic adaptation, where yesterday's delight becomes tomorrow's baseline. Recognizing that this paralysis is a feature, not a flaw, gives you power to reshape your decision landscape. You can prune your mental menu, simplify criteria, and guard your cognitive resources for what truly matters. Start by pruning your mental menu with a simple decision filter. Choose 1 to 3 non-negotiable criteria for any major choice, whether it's picking a lunch spot or deciding on a career path. Then discard options that don't meet them. Imagine you're tending a bonsai. Instead of letting every branch sprout wild, you trim away what doesn't serve the overall shape. Grab a pen and list your top 3 values for today: health, creativity, connection, and then scan your options quickly, eliminating anything that fails the test. Next, batch your smaller decisions into a single session. Set aside 10 minutes each morning to plan your outfit, meals, and work tasks, and lock in those choices before moving on. This preserves your willpower, because every decision you make consumes a tiny drop of your mental energy, and batching them into a decision sprint frees you to focus on deeper work the rest of the day. Finally, use defaults and pre-commitments as your allies. Subscribe to meal kit delivery instead of scouring every recipe site. Automate bill payments to avoid late-night fee anxiety, and designate a trusted friend to hold you accountable when you feel stuck. If you catch yourself spiraling into what-if territory, pause and practice the good enough mantra. Breathe in, acknowledge that perfection is an endless horizon, and remind yourself that a satisficer's choice, one that meets your criteria and feels right, often leads to more satisfaction than chasing an elusive best. This toolkit transforms choice from a burden into a deliberate practice. By defining constraints, batching decisions, and leaning on defaults, you'll reclaim clarity and confidence, ensuring your freedom feels like liberation rather than a trap. When you finish making a decision and that nagging what-if starts whispering in your ear, it helps to meet it with self-compassion rather than self-criticism. Begin a simple decision journal. Write down the choice you made, the top 3 reasons you picked it, and one potential benefit you're curious to explore. Seal that entry and schedule a quick 5-minute review 1 week later to see what you've learned, rather than endlessly rerunning the mental tape in your head. This retrospective ritual turns guilt into curiosity and transforms regret from a burden into a data point for better future decisions. Alongside journaling, practice cognitive reappraisal. When you catch yourself imagining a better alternative, pause and deliberately reframe the thought. Acknowledge that no choice is perfect, affirm that every path brings its own growth, and remind yourself of the real gains you've experienced so far. If you feel torn, try the future self technique. Look ahead 3 months and ask, which option would my wiser self thank me for choosing? By shifting perspective to your longer-term narrative, you dilute the anxiety of instant comparison and strengthen your ability to live with good enough choices. Over time, these rituals build a resilient mindset where every decision, even imperfect, is an opportunity to learn, grow, and move forward with confidence. As you begin weaving these practices into your routine, you'll notice that what once felt like limits now fuel your creativity and peace of mind. An artist forced to paint with 3 colors often discovers new shades, just as you may uncover unseen options when you trim your own menu. Try a constraint challenge this week by giving yourself just 5 dinner recipes, 3 podcast choices, and 2 daily commute routes. Observe how narrowing your field sharpens your focus and deepens your enjoyment. Philosophers like Seneca argued that true freedom comes not from boundless choice, but from mastering your desires. And modern studies confirm that people who voluntarily adopt constraints report greater satisfaction and less decision fatigue. When you choose to limit the noise, you free your mind to hear what matters most: your values, your long-term goals, your authentic voice. Over time, this practice shifts you from being at the mercy of endless options to becoming an intentional curator of your own life, turning every decision into a deliberate act of self-expression rather than a stress test. By embracing constraints as creative tools, you reclaim the joy of choice, transforming what once felt like a burden into a canvas for growth and fulfillment. Now that you've seen how pruning options sharpens your focus, batching decisions conserves willpower, and self-compassion rituals transform regret into insight, it's time to put it all together in your day-to-day life. Start tomorrow by choosing 3 core values that matter most, perhaps creativity, connection, or calm, and apply your decision filter to every choice you make, from what you eat to how you spend your free time. Schedule a single decision sprint for small tasks and honor your future self perspective when bigger crossroads appear. Keep your decision journal close, revisit your entries with curiosity rather than criticism, and watch how boundaries you set become the scaffold for deeper satisfaction and genuine freedom. Remember, mastering choice isn't about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to what truly aligns with who you are. If you found this toolkit helpful, give this video a thumbs up to let us know you're ready to reclaim your mental energy, share it with friends who might feel stuck in decision overload, and subscribe to Mind Unlocked for more practical strategies that turn complex psychology into clear, actionable tools for better thinking.